Nothing makes me wetter than a wedding day night than having a character selector at the beginning of a game. The fact that I can just stroll through here, find the sexiest character, and that's what I look for most of the time, is the one that's the most stacked. And yeah, I know that there's a cool biker guy and a priest guy, but I'm taking the black chick with half of her pants removed, because that's based. That's Giga Chad behavior. But we start this whole game with an execution, which is absolutely badass. I mean, talk about making my nipples hard right out of the gate. And I haven't even told you the title yet. It flashed on screen, but this is Hunter the Reckoning. Now let's watch this dirty criminal fries. Yummy. Smells like bacon. But only thing that happened because he got fried is he unleashed all the depths of hell. All sorts of souls are floating in. Yes, souls. All the souls that have died in these prison walls are now taking possession of all they can see. Except for your main characters, that is. And yes, every one of the characters that you had a chance to select at the beginning in that character selector are here, like the black chick right here. She ends up deciding she doesn't need half of her pants for some reason later, and that's going to be me. But you got your biker, you got your priest, you got your Asian chick that was way too into EDM, and they're all here stuck with all of these demons. And I love the way this game starts. It takes this moment to show you that something has happened here before, that this isn't the first time that your character has dealt with this. They have seen this before. They have faced the evil head on and then slammed their muff into their faces and smothered them to death, only to shut this prison down for good, knowing that they will constantly have to check on this sacred evil ground for the rest of their lives, because they are the ones who witnessed the terror of the past. And I love that setup. I love that this game just decided, instead of doing what a lot of games does and just throws you in the boots right away, you have no idea what's going on. This game is like, hey, listen here, man, we're gonna do some fucking like world building real quick. You're gonna understand what's going on. We're gonna give you some good precedents to build on, and then it jumps to the future, like 3 years or something, and there's a rave happening at the prison you locked down. Yeah, these stupid ass kids, goddamn it, back in my day, when I saw a place was locked down, I said, hey man, I'm not gonna mess with that, because there might be some oogity boogities in there and some creepy ghosties, some ghoulies and gas. I don't want to be there. And of course these guys are idiots, so look at that, they're all getting possessed. And as they're getting possessed, you know that it's time for our heroes to come back into the picture, because the horrors, the creepies of the night, the background cast of the Thriller music video are terrorizing everyone. So then you go to a train station, which I love train stations, and that's probably because of Max Payne, and I'm completely cool with that. If you haven't played Max Payne, we'll get into it later, but God, some great subway missions, and you come out, but you don't look like the prison guard you were before. Hell nah. You decided you don't need half of your pants because you got a fresh tattoo, and that's it. I have no idea why she decided to cut off half of her pants. This is not a style I've seen on a lot of women before, so it's very original. But your subway car then wrecks into another one, causing it to burst into wonderful flames, just like when you spray Nair on your derriere and light it on fire. Same effect, same technology is used. Probably not at all, I don't know. But you do get control of your character here. And about time, I might add, because even though I really like the setup, it was quite the jaunt to get here. A lot of things happened. Now, I have played games where they really weigh you down with a bunch of dialogue. This game didn't really do that. It was all action, so I was happy to just lay back, grab my dick, and have a good time. At the end of the day, I would much rather be playing with my joysticks instead of my happy stick in my pants. But this moment of running in the sun doesn't last very long, because right after you save your first citizen, you basically find out that he works for the subway system. And his name is Jared. I'm just kidding. He doesn't mess with kids. This is a normal subway guy. He is cool. We're not comparing him to Jared. But he basically tells you that if he would need an entire crew to move this train in order for you guys to be able to get out of here. So that kind of sets this little precedent that whenever you see civilians out in the world that you need to save them. I like the way they did that. Instead of just putting random citizens throughout the world for you to save, and you just be like, oh, I guess I should save them because I'm a hero or whatever. This game gives you another reason to do that. And I like the way that the game developers kind of thought about that, and they were like, well, yeah, every game you gotta save people. Well, what if we gave another reason? What if we just had other like causes and effects going through, and that actually affects the ending at the end of the game. You get the better ending the more citizens you save to get closer to that 40 or 50 number of citizens, whatever it is that you need to push that stupid broken subway car off of the tracks. But now that I have a little bit of time to breathe after all the chaos that just happened in this opening section, I kind of want to take things back a little bit, because you see, this is actually based off of a tabletop RPG. Releasing in 1999 to absolute dominance acclaim, IGN called this the best tabletop RPG of the modern era. This sixth entry to the World of Darkness series was a smash hit. There's something to be said when it's considered one of their most promising intellectual properties of this series, when this same series encompasses Vampire the Masquerade, which is an absolute juggernaut. I don't think I have to elaborate more on that. But you see, because of the success of this, Interplay wanted a part of it. So they pulled one of their studios known for absolutely nothing, High Voltage, and said, hey guys, let's make an RPG based on one of these World of Darkness series. Well, the developers were like, well, we've been playing that new one, the Hunter the Reckoning game, and they said, fucking send it, baby. I want you to put your man and female meat all over those tabletop RPGs and make me a game and make me some money. They got on that Sigma grind set, and there was probably some real crunch in this, because the tabletop RPG released in 1999, like I said, and this game released in 2002. And when this game released, it wasn't showered in praises. But let's not get into what other people's opinions are. We're here to listen to me talk about what I thought of the game. And I have to tell you, all the way up until the point you're seeing right now, I was having a freaking blast. I was having so much fun. I like the little intricate details they put, like when you save citizens, like when they actually talk to you and stuff. It's almost like they can't see that there's monsters, that they only see that there's crazy people losing their goddamn minds. And it's little details like that that I feel like these people actually had a deep love for this RPG, for this world that they decided to make a game on. And I love to see that in a game, because you can tell at every single area of this game how much love for this original IP they had when making it. Now, a lot of people could say, hey, I think it's kind of cringy that they took an RPG, kind of like boiled an RPG down into a hack and slash and then made a game. That feels kind of rude to its roots. But given this was a studio that was known for absolutely nothing at the time, I think what they pulled off here is pretty impressive, because when I jumped into this game, like I do a lot of these older games from the original Xbox era, I have a preconceived notion that I'm not going to enjoy. I mean, I'm going to have fun with them, but I'm going to realize that it's an old game and it's going to be clunky. The thing about this game is I never felt like it was that clunky. I felt like the camera was one of the best cameras I've ever messed with in a game like this. I feel like the character work that's done, when you first get your first boss, the little reactions that your character has, it feels almost like a Western mixed with like a horror game, like Blade or something. It's so perfect. I love the way your characters react to things. I love the cinematic vibe to your boss fights. I love that this game basically is like how Dragon's Dogma is to like Skyrim. This is that to Diablo. Because unlike in Diablo, where you get tons and tons of options to build your character, like in Dragon's Dogma, you kind of just pick a class and then keep speccing toward that class, and it does it for you automatically. And depending on which character you choose, which class you start out with, you get a very different playing experience. Yeah, it comes down to a very similar style of attack, but your tools are different. Like the character I chose compared to the Preacher is completely different. And on top of that, the weird individuals you meet throughout this game, the first monster that you talk with that looks straight out of Clive Barker's Hellraiser isn't a monster that you're going to attack, because he protects this little girl that you go to save at the school. And he's actually like, listen, what happened years ago was when you fried that crazy person, spiritual energy was released. Well, someone else has caused that. You need to go back to the source. And you think it's the serial killer. And I love that he shows up and he's very ominous. But he's one of those characters that it's like, is he on my side? Is he not on my side? What is this this guy moving through the story? What is his purpose? I love questions like that. It keeps me engaged. It keeps me wanting to dive deeper into that pussy no matter how many teeth there are. Another thing this game does incredibly well is atmosphere. It feels like each second you go through each of these levels, it's like climbing between Kate Beckinsale's legs during the era of Underworld. I know we can all imagine it, sitting back on the couch, enjoying watching her kill vampires, and while she zips up that leather, you're like, and that's what I feel like in these levels. It's taking me back to that time period because this game plays and feels like that era, and it's something nostalgic about it. But when I'm playing it, it doesn't feel like I'm playing an old game like a lot of games do, how we romanticize them in our minds only to go back and they play like utter turtle shit up your nose straight to the brain like cocaine. Because I haven't really talked about how great this game plays. I mean, I've touched on it, but right here I'm doing an escort mission, one of the banes of this era's existence. These escort missions in a lot of games of this time frame felt like pulling nutsack hairs out one by one, tying them together, and then using them as dental floss. But in this game, you really don't think about her. Yes, does it slow down that level? Absolutely. But she has so much health that you don't really have to worry about her, and if you just kind of run with her, you just kind of go around and find the key anyways. It doesn't ever really ruin the experience, and I thought it would. And at first, I was like, fuck this slow-ass kid, dude. I'm gonna punch it into the atmosphere. Boom! I'm the baby! By the end of the mission, I actually was attached to the little fucker, and I was curious about what would happen to it. I didn't want any harm to befall this poor little child. And as I slowly, deeply ease my way into the little chapel to see what befalls the area, only to find that it's finally safe. The child finally gets to reunite with its parents, and I've been having this kid as my supplemental kid for a time, and I feel sad in a moment that I have to say goodbye, but I'm so happy that it gets to reunite with the ones it loves so. Only then you start to realize that its teddy bear collected some paranormal aids on the way, knowing that it probably harvested the soul of Eazy-E to turn into this giant colossal monster bear with claws. Get the fuck out of here, Teddy! Murdering a kid's parents? You just turned her into the next Batman. So after I see this awful display of horrors, it's time for me to teach Eazy-E the teddy bear a lesson. That's right, I get to fight a giant teddy bear with teeth and claws. How sick is that? Let's go into boss fights real quick. Since I'm here, since I'm queer, pause, super straight, since I'm here and super straight, I shall regale you with the stories of a boss fight. The way the boss fights work in this game is you kind of keep your distance from the enemies, at least in the early game, and then you slowly piece off their health using your different weapons that you picked up, and or your sword or your main weapon. And after you do that for a while, you whittle down their boss meter until they're dead, like any boss fight. One problem is a lot of enemies are real quick, so they'll come in and just start plowing those cheeks deep until you can die, but you collect so many healths by saving citizens that you kind of can steamroll through most of the bosses. But right after you beat this boss, old Pinhead shows back up to kind of clown on you this time, and this is what I meant earlier when I said he kind of goes between good and evil. This time he's like, haha, you fucking loser, you were able to beat a teddy bear, congratulations, now go to the sewers like the dirt you are. Okay, maybe he wasn't that bad, maybe he just kind of made fun of me for beating a teddy bear, and I'd like to see you try. The funny thing about that interaction is he does tell you his name, and his name is Carpenter, so we got a little John Carpenter throwback there, which is kind of weird because he seems like he's from a Clive Barker movie, or I might be just looking into this a bit too hard, like the nerd I am. But regardless of my feelings toward his character and his name, I decided to progress into the sewers anyway, because they are the best and quickest route to the prison itself, because like I said earlier, the whole source of all this evil is coming from the prison, where it all started. And right here is where I'm going to put a little more adoration onto the game, because once you get into the sewers, you start to fight some new enemies, you run into these weird, sexy vampire chicks that remind me a lot of Blood Rain. Super happy to start fighting those. They carry SMGs, they're real quick, so you gotta stay on your your toes, and like I fight him from a distance, but every once in a while, if you get him in a stun from shooting him, you can like pull your sword out and just start like playing their pussy hairs like string on a fiddle with your sword. You also start to run into a lot more zombies with guns, and they carry different kinds of guns. You'll have ones that'll walk a little faster and carry pistols. You'll have ones that'll kind of stay back and use shotguns. So this game likes to ramp up the enemies and also change their designs completely to where they feel like a very unique situation each time you fight them, which is super refreshing. And right after playing Vanquish, which had annoyingly repetitive enemy design, not that the game wasn't fun, just bad enemy design. Considering when I look at this game, I can see an enemy and I'm like, okay, here's the game plan. Because I know this enemy looks this way, it's gonna perform this way. Therefore, you have this kind of effect going on in your brain where you're like calculating it 8,000% like a goddamn super scientist just processing how to save the world by utilizing his sexual libido. Alright, it's not that deep, but it is really good enemy design at the end of the day. And when I started to see this was in the sewer missions. I mean, there's even the parts where you're shooting alligators in the sewers. I mean, how neat is that? That's pretty neat. But I think we've talked enough about the sewers. It's time that we actually finally get to this prison. While we get to the prison, I want to go through a couple things that this game kind of does that I'm not the biggest fan of. Now, every little section will have places where you have to go find an enemy to kill to get a key, or you will have to run around and collect enough souls or save enough people to progress the area. The one thing that annoys me about this is it calls it a bonus objective when it's like, bro, is it really a fucking bonus if that's the only way to open the door? Like, come on, man. That doesn't slap clit. That doesn't even jerk yourself off. That's just like patting yourself on the back for doing nothing than what you were just supposed to do. Wow, look at me. I did the thing I needed to do to get to the next room. Look like I deserve a bonus? Absolutely. It's kind of stupid. It gives me that vibe, and it gets kind of tedious, especially when you get to the end of the section where you know you need to proceed, and it's like, you didn't save enough people, you better go fucking back. Oh, you didn't send enough souls to heaven? Well, fuck you right in the deep recesses of your ear canal, because sucks to suck, you better go find those skeletons to save. I don't know, it just seems kind of cringe, and that type of stuff kind of weighs the experience down, especially when it is as tight of an experience as it is. I get that this game isn't very long, and it kind of works to pad it out, and if you know where these skeletons or people are during the mission, it's not like you really have to go that far out of your way to get them, but sometimes you're not even thinking about looking for them, and in a couple scenarios I didn't know I was supposed to do that because I just missed the little flash on the screen that said, hey fucktard, you better do this. I missed that, so now I have to go through the entire section again to find these side objectives, which aren't actually side objectives, they're main objectives. Story wise, what we're doing right now is we're trying to make our way through the prison far enough to where we can finally find the warden, because I know that warden's been up to some weird autoerotic asphyxiation up into his chambers. I mean, who doesn't cut a little time into the day to pull a David Carradine in the afternoon? I mean, are you a real man if you don't pull a David Carradine? Come on now. I do love the way the warden's mansion is set up though. It's kind of got this like vampiric vibe, and you do fight a lot of vampires inside, but the interesting part about it is once you get into the actual mansion itself, the way it works is you go room to room, but each room has like a gauntlet of enemies, and once you defeat that gauntlet of enemies, you acquire a key, and then you go to another room in the hallway, and you kind of rinse and repeat until you finally get the warden's door. I just thought this was really cool. It kind of reminded me of Resident Evil in a way, where you're slowly progressing and finding what you need in another room to open another door. It's a very simplistic, dumbed down version of it, but I don't know, I really vibed with this fucking thing, and it's not to mention that it was really fun fighting all these enemies in these close corridors, because this game like amplifies itself when you get to fight a bunch of enemies in like a horde, and then break away from the horde just to like pound some bullets up their bussies. And yeah, you might run out of ammo in your side arms and like while you're running around shooting all these things, but you also have a gun that has infinite ammo, so you have this constant rotation of different weapons and then falling back to your sidearm, using your sword, and then picking up more ammo to do it again. It's a very fun gameplay loop, and when you do find the key to progress, you always feel like you've accomplished something because you're constantly moving, you're constantly grooving, you're dry humping your waifu pillow. All sorts of fun is being had, and that's what a video game should be. It should have a combat loop. Even if it's simple, it should be fun. And at the end of the day, this game accomplishes that. But I do finally find the warden, only to find out that he is a vampire. That's right. He is the boss of all those vampires you fought throughout the game, and I like the way they did that. They introduced you to some vampires early on as a single enemy type, to then eventually meet his boss. It's not the most like evolved mastermind writing, but it is good enough, and it does lay a groundwork so when you do meet him, it does feel like, oh, this progressed that way, and it didn't just fucking happen out of nowhere. But this douche trumpet starts to regale you with his whole story, which right away I started to feel like was complete bullshit because he's playing the victim card, and I hate people who play the victim card. Grow a pair of nuts and grow up, because I can't trust this guy as far as I can come, and let me tell you, I don't have a powerful blast. But basically the story of bullshit he tells you is like, I didn't ask for this, man. I'm just a victim of my scenario. They killed my family and turned me into this monster. Now I have to lead all the vampires. Sure, douchebag. I believe you. No, I'm gonna kill your ass. And that's what I do. I go on to his boss fight. His boss fight has some pretty bullshit attacks. There's one that has such a big AoE that I never felt like I truly got that far ahead of him. And the one problem with these later boss fights is if you don't have the character for the boss fight that does the most damage, you can really be kneecapped here, because each different class has their benefits against different monsters. If you play as the preacher, he has a crossbow and it does more damage to an enemy like this. Me with a pistol, I just kind of fucking shot him for a long time. But after I beat him, it's time to move my way through the actual prison to try to get to the main cause of this situation, the serial killer himself. And I have to say, there's an enemy type in this game that is the most hilarious thing to attack ever. It's these ghosts. They have basically unalived themselves using some rope, and when you shoot them, they swing. They're literally swinging back and forth as you shoot them, and it's so morbidly hilarious. Like, look, it's almost like, you know, when they're doing those Christmas bell things, like ding dong ding 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 dong ding ding. It's like that, but with people who are swinging from rope. It's so dark and twisted, but I'm in love with it. But after you deal with the bell quartet of hanging ghosts, it's time to go deeper into the depths of the prison. And when you get down there, you meet this weird scientist guy who just summons a bunch of goddamn monsters into his boss fight. Incredibly easy boss fight when you're just focusing on him, but he summons in the first stage boss on your ass the entire fight. He wasn't that interesting. He was just typical crazy science guy, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on him. I do think it's kind of funny that you go from boss fight to a quick gauntlet of enemies to boss fight, and that's kind of how this game progresses. It kind of turns into a light boss rush, but I am okay with that because the game's story feels like it's amplified its way to this, and because I had so much time fighting enemies when I had to keep backtracking and doing all this stuff about the side bullshit that I complained about earlier. And his character doesn't ever come off as useless because he's a scientist who works for whoever is causing all this to create a lot of the grotesque monsters you're seeing, so he has a purpose. And I like that they added in that not all of these giant monsters you're seeing are the ghosts, but some of them are that are people possessed, but some of them are actually created by a scientist as well. So I like that they kind of broadened the world that way. But right after you beat him, you go back to a lot of more enemy gauntlets, and like I said, the game really amplifies itself here, so the areas between these last few bosses feel like absolute hell, and you really got to stay on your toes. Not like it's the hardest thing in the world, but you are moving and grooving like a son of a bitch. You are eating it deep like a lesbian who hasn't eaten for 3 weeks. You're going down there hardcore, baby. I do have to say, the one problem I did have with all these enemies in these areas is it seems like the game stopped worrying about atmosphere and started throwing as many enemies at you as it fucking could, just kind of slinging shit at the wall and hoping it's stuck for enemies instead of actually building atmosphere, because it seems like you're more running through these areas at a much different pace that the game had previously set. And that is really my only gripe with the later regular enemy encounters of the late game, is it's just more of a push through, kill a bunch, push through, kill a bunch, get to boss fight. And after you do kill a bunch of people, you do get to meet up with the Carpenter again, and this time he's kind of like telling you, hey, I'm here to kill the Warden because he basically was a douchebag to me when I was still alive, and every time that we've been revived, my goal has been to kill the Warden. And I'm like, well, I already killed him. And that pisses off Carpenter. He had one goal in life. He had one dream. He's like, oh, I have a dream. I want to kill that vampire warden because he was a son of a bitch to me. All I wanted was to be treated like a normal dude, and he was a vampire. And basically the whole basement of the prison was used as a torture chamber to bleed people out of blood so that they could feed vampires, which is super dark. I love that. I mean, it's like totes edgy. But when you get to the boss fight, I have to say this is my least favorite boss fight in this entire game, which pains me because I was really excited to fight this guy, and when he strips down and pulls out his blades, you're like, oh, he's gonna be cool. But the problem is he's so fast that the only real attack you can do on him is to sprint around in circles and shoot him with whatever weapons you have, which you kind of deplete a lot of your ammunition early on in this boss fight by shooting the electrical chair that he's somehow bind to. Because, like, spirits have the ability to bind to things, and if you kill the thing they're bind to, you then defeat a lot of their power. Watch Supernatural, they explain that shit in there. But in this game, in this situation, once you destroy the chair, then you're just sprinting around in circles for a very long time. Because, like I said, most bosses in this game have a lot of health, so you just constantly are running around in circles like a goddamn jackass who can't find his tail. It's like a dog who can't find his tail. The whole fucking boss fight, so lame. And it doesn't get any better, it doesn't get any worse. You just run out of ammo, so it ends up taking longer because you're back to your regular sidearm, which isn't bad against regular enemies, but when you're fighting a boss, it doesn't take a lot of their health away, so you just continuously run around, slowly picking off his health until the boss fight's over. I mean, do you see the shit that's going on screen right now? This is so infuriating in game, and it puts such a sour taste in what otherwise is an absolutely phenomenal game where I had so much fun with all the different bosses. To have this boss, which at the time in the point of the game I was like, oh, this is gonna be like one of the big end blowouts, this is it, this is what we're going for, baby. And just to run around in circles, man, not cool. Super cringe, but you do finally defeat him, you finally free his soul, and I couldn't wait to move on from this stupid shit. Yet right after him, it's time to get some real shit done, and you go to meet the actual serial killer from the beginning of the game who you think started this whole second scenario off over again. It's time to face him one-on-one, and he just begins to tell you that he's not the one who started this. He isn't the guy that caused this particular invasion of souls. He started the first one, but by accident. This one was orchestrated by someone else. Who, you might ask? That's right, the lying son of a bitch warden. He lied to you. What a shock. He didn't actually die when you thought you killed him. But you see, the thing that's happening with the serial killer is he is holding back a werewolf, because he's a werewolf for some reason. Yeah, that's right, a fucking werewolf. And he's trying to hold him back so he doesn't attack you because he wants you to succeed in your endeavors. He feels bad for the people he has killed and he wants to be done killing. The funny thing is, when he fucking turns into the werewolf, he has nipple rings. Why does a werewolf have nipple rings? What type of 2K or 20,000, 2000s bullshit is this? You fight a werewolf with fucking nipple rings. What does he think he is? In a grunge band in the 90s? Come on, bro. But this boss fight was incredibly fun. It was a good thing to wash my mouth out of the bad taste of the last boss fight. I had an absolute blast with this. I couldn't have had more pleasure than if I was deep dicking my wife right now. Actually, that's not true. I would love to do that anytime. Way more than playing video games. But it was a good boss fight nonetheless. Another incredible thing that this game does right here is it shows that the serial killer gains back control of the werewolf for a second, telling you, hey man, I need you to get out of here because you need to go stop the warden, and I can't control this werewolf state for very long, but I'm going to do my absolute fucking best, but you need to go get your job done. You need to get those stacks, get those racks, and fucking lay some clam on this stupid son of a bitch's face, because baby, it's time to slap clit. And that's what you do. You start fighting like ghost dogs, and every one of these little sections on the way to the warden has a really cool thing. Instead of you finding a key, what you do is you fight the werewolf again, but with less health. which kind of feels like fun little mini boss speedrun fights, and it's so freaking cool, dude. Like, right when I was starting to get a little annoyed at this game for putting me through these weird gauntlets that felt like it was just throwing stuff at the wall, the game's like, alright, we get you, we understand you're mad that we're not building up atmosphere. Alright, how about the werewolf chasing you the entire time, and you have to face off with it before every section so you don't have to go hunting for keys? That's fucking cool. I really like that, and I really like the way it worked out in this game. And then when you do finally get back to the Warden's mansion, you have to fend yourself off against a giant harem of vampire chicks, which is so cool considering that's their nest. I mean, yeah, you fight them when you're there the first time, but this time it really amplifies it before this boss fight, which is incredibly interesting, I think. And when the boss fight starts, it starts with the werewolf trying to attack the Warden, and him just being like, get the fuck out of here, dog. You ain't shit to me. And it's like, oh shit, this is gonna be a real boss fight. And one thing I need to tell you going into this boss fight, make sure your chainsaw has full ammunition or full fuel, because one of the main aspects of this boss fight is to cut the window or the wood off of the window so you can let the light bleed in, and then you can actually do real damage to the enemy. Otherwise, he will swarm you with a bunch of himself, he'll clone himself and kill you. Another thing is, if you free the weird civilians in the cages inside the room, it will add more copies of him. So you don't have to save them, because if you've saved enough citizens up until this point, you will not need those 3, and it's okay to let them be sacrificed. I don't really understand how they would be sacrificed though, because once you beat the Warden, you'd free him anyways, so it's better to just focus on this stupid son of a bitch anyway, because he's an angry little man. The reason I tell you all of this and give you this forewarning is because I played this boss fight more than any other boss fight in this game. He will drain all the lives you've had stacked up through the entire campaign almost instantly. His attacks are brutal, his clones don't take any damage, so you can only damage the main vampire version. And when you actually know that, okay, so the wood in front of the window, you're gonna need a chainsaw to break it, because chainsaw cuts wood. And I like the way that the individual things in this game work that way, and different characters have different buffs against different things, and it's all logical. And the little things like that, it shows how much love these developers had for this game. But once you know, like, hey, chainsaw cuts wood, you can really beat this boss fight without any sweat. It's incredibly easy. It's not like the easiest thing ever, but it's a good boss fight, and you can get through it with kind of a breeze. But if you don't do those things, it is an absolute nightmare. And I like the way they did that. I like the forethought into it. It makes you try things, it makes you fail at things. And at the end of the day, this whole game was an absolute pleasure of an experience, and I can't say enough good about it. I can't wait to play the sequels. And that's all I really got for you guys today. You end up saving enough citizens, you all leave the town. Well, at least the citizens you saved do. For you, it's time for you to go into the light, to have your riding off in the sunset moment. And for me, that's about all I have for this video, but I'm going to leave you with this after credit scene because it's hilarious.
Look what you're making me do! Oh! Go away! Leave me alone! Run! Run! Run from